So generally, my name is Oleg Prexin, and I am head of this session together with Alexei Maslov, and we are co-moderators. I think that we don't need to introduce specially Mr. Maslov. He is a popular figure. He is a popular person. Quite often he is on the screen on TV, a lot of different positions, but he's the director of Institute of Asia and Africa of Moscow State University. And I represent in parallel as the Financial Business Center of Eurasian Cooperation. I'm the head of the Committee of International Cooperation Association of the Russian Banks, where I am the vice president, and in Russian Union of Committee of International Cooperation, where we all together with Mr. Dubinin, who would make his speech later, we are the head of Specialized Financial Subcommittee. Our session today is before the plenary session. The plenary session of the 9th International Financial Economic Moscow Forum, and it is the final step in the specialized sessions and meetings of these sections, which were held this week not only in Moscow, but in Bucharest, in Rome, and the questions of financial and banking activities, they are on all the specialized sessions, but the management of the committee of the forum supposed that it is important to hold the separate session dedicated to the financial and banking matters, and as the registration shows on our meeting, it was not a mistake. We have registered almost 150 participants, mainly they make speeches, they participate in the meetings in online formats, but nevertheless they would have an opportunity to contact us, and our assistants would tackle the questions which appear in the chat. And I would say immediately that we have a very strict timing. We have registered one, or even 15, yes, 15 speech makers, and we have not so much time. We have 2.5 hours before the plenary session and before the break. That's why I would have to moderate and would put the limit for all the participants, for all the speech makers. This is 10 minutes. And I would put the timer and warn 2 minutes before the speech is over, like in our intellectual games, as you know. I would not take much time anymore, especially considering the fact that in 20-25 minutes the session of International Banking Council is opening, in which the vice president of association, Alexander Murchev, would be participating in our head of the Scientific and Economic Council of our association, Baysetiv Bahitbek. They're in the first row sitting here. That's why I would ask you to consider the fact that if they would stand up and leave, they are obliged to be presented on another session in the neighboring hall, and that's a signal to leave our space. I would not waste the time, because practically on all the main topics of our session today, this is financing of sustainable development. Recently, I have wrote an article in our magazine, the newsmaker of financial and economic matters, where I paid attention to the fact that the goals of sustainable development, SDGs, of United Nations, do not mix them with ESG. This is ecology, sustainability, and governance. These are different matters, and several magazines are on the table if someone needs them to get acquainted to read through, and this is also available on the website of our association. So if Alexei would say a couple of words, I would be happy, and after that we start our meeting. Thank you. Dear colleagues, I welcome everyone with whom I did not manage to say hello personally. I see a lot of my friends, and first of all, because I am the moderator number 2, I don't see nothing bad in this. I just ask you to keep the time frame and the question about the goals of sustainable development, especially now, it's very important, and that is discussed on different forums. But the only thing what I do not see on this discussion, and generally I don't see that any particular recommendation. This is very important because now the time of the general conferences, general discussions, it's over. Now it is important to make a short mechanism of implementation on a short term and middle term, because many concepts which were developed in the present condition, they do not work how we want it to work. And we would be thankful and grateful if there would be precise recommendations and ideas. How can we solve now the questions which we face? That's why, dear colleagues, I ask you to move to the practical issues. And I guess we can start. Thank you very much, Alexei. And I will turn the floor for the welcoming part of the president of the Financial Business Association, Li Xiaobin, who would welcome us from China. I ask you to switch on the video. Dear colleagues, dear participants of the forum, good morning. I'm glad to open the topic of the financing of the sustainable development. Are there opportunities for growth? The goals of sustainable development, and in order to keep the responsible business, it has paid a lot of attention in many developed and in many developing countries. The leader of China, Xi Jinping, many times mentioned the necessity to follow the way of sustainable development, establishing the well-being of the population and the healthy ecology. The existing architecture of international relations has organization directly working with assessment of these standards, the Organization of United Nations, the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, and others. The present activities and generally the crisis time in the world, of course, imprinted the mechanism on the implementation of the standards. But the ideas, the definitions of sustainable development, the social responsibility, care of environment and ecology are deep in our minds and thoughts, and they became the key principles of the work of the big international business. Today, we are going to discuss what are the opportunities for the growth in the part of implementation of the policy of sustainable development in global and national context. We will think of the problems of financing of such projects. Dear colleagues, I wish you successful work. Thank you, Mr. Lee. I will turn the floor to the head of the Financial Business Association of Eurasian Cooperation, Vice President of Russian Union of Entrepreneurs, Murachev Alexander. Thank you very much, dear Oleg. I'm glad to welcome you, dear Alexei, here on the meeting of our union. Dear colleagues, I would say that the topic is crucially important in the financing of sustainable development. Are the opportunities for the economic growth? And of course, this caused a big interest of our partners, of the members of association, and practically the last session is held in the frames of international business, and as a result, we need to develop the suggestion, which can be our general resolution of our forum, joint resolution, which would be held today in the same venue where we would have big representativeness of the international business and politicians. We would have both them in offline and online. We would have the representatives of the Latin America, India, China, CIS countries, and of course Russia. That would be a big and vast representatives. And despite the present turbulent monument, which inputs the influence on the representatives of many countries, still, nevertheless, the business is living its own opportunities and necessities. And this means that we are making absolutely proper things and we organize such facilities and places and we try to make influence in our government in order to provide the sustainable development and to stick to the equal conditions of the competitiveness and to organize the international global aspect. I would say that part of the sustainable development ESG, what Oleg mentioned today. In our associations, we used to discuss how acute this topic because there were many suggestions from the Russian Union of Entrepreneurs, and they asked why should we moderate, why should we actually develop this topic because everyone faces difficulties and we cannot live from the classic energy. Let's leave it out of the brackets. Up to the relations would become a normality. But our big players, our big corporations and companies, they said that that's not true. That's not a normal attitude. ESG is the very important part of the chain. And the project connected to the sustainable development, to the global sustainable development, this is very important from the point of keeping the standards and improvement of the standards. We live not only with the countries which express the friendly manner to us, but we live in a global world and these principles they exist and the other countries follow them. That's why we keep these principles, and moreover, when we made the report through the questionnaires, the interest to this project connected to the ESG topic, it has increased 100% within the last year. And when we are talking about the payments and calculations, this is a very important question. This is one of the important aspects of today. I would say that it's very important to discuss the suggestions connected to the risks and expectations of the business and carrying out the transborder operations as well, because when the business is asking and we are asking the business, they try somehow to reflect in these questions the problems with the transborder operations, how to avoid the currencies which are not welcomed in Russia, in other countries, and the forms of relations between the organizations with the countries of Arabian world, with Turkey and other countries. And we see the transition to alternative currencies. The tendency is huge, but we see still a lot of problems in billing in traditional centers, which our regulators would welcome, our corporations would welcome. That's why in this part I would see that on this session we would pay attention and we would develop attitude in the aspect of creating the tools to tackle the matters. The problem is that SWIFT is left behind. I mean, Russia, we have the center of banking system, financial system, but how does it suit to other countries? There are quite a lot of questions, and we have a contact point with other countries. We maybe have other alternatives, but we need to search and to develop it and to suggest for the government of our countries and regulators. We need to study thoroughly the financial technical companies, especially in the conditions where we launch the projects for digitalization. This is very important, and the calculation, the payments, it all leads to the fact that the problems of the calculation and billing problems and paying tools and to take down the self-price. That's very important for all of us. That's why I would like to welcome all of you, dear colleagues, and to wish you successful work. The session is very important, and I would like to pay attention that these suggestions should be, and the head of the Financial Business Association, the management of this association would consider your suggestions in our practical work in the interaction with the international financial community. Thank you.
Sure.
So thank you, thank you. And it's very nice for me to give the floor to Mr. Vasitov, the president of Kazakhstan Bank and the head of the board of directors and the head of the business council. Hello, my friends. Today I wanted to say so many things, and I would like to tell you about the history of our bank. So we created this bank, and of course we spoke a lot about different things, and we supposed that considering this new globalization, we will have different contradictions because there are so many events in economics, events in politics, events in metrics, bank metrics, and regulators, and so on. So today it's a moment where this versatile reality creates these paradoxical things. So our national regulators continue to regulate us and regulate the commercial banks. They give them the policeman functions and our metrics, compliance metrics and risk control and so on. They destroy any credits and any increase of political risks. So that's why, yes, it's clear that banks and all the channels, traditional channels and financial channels, transactions, informational channels, they contradict all these metrics of regulation because it's formal and political risks nowadays are so big that they go against all finance. And then it's very difficult to calculate it because NPV is calculated basing on the cost of commodities, if it's some oil project, if it's some resource project. So that's why any project nowadays is delayed without any precise evaluation of it because we don't have the system of evaluation. We don't have the most important element. So that's why we can suppose different things. And yes, many projects are very undefined. That's why all our bank works stops in such a way that risks are quite higher than our reserves. And of course, it's absolutely clear that these reserves cannot actually overlap the views of our regulators who try to evaluate them anyway. So that's why we give ourselves to the goodwill of the national regulators, and we need to look at those political risks that we have nowadays. What else would I like to say? I have quite a big practical background as a banker because I worked in a bank, in a commercial bank, in an association of the bank, in the business council of the banks.
Разные уровни деятельности.
These are different levels of the activity. So the practice of banking that we have nowadays, commercial banking, and it is under the pressure of the technological progress, the digitalization, and the forming of platforms. So that's why it's under big changes. And of course, it requires a theoretically new basis. We need to go to the political economy back. What is the international division of the labor? What is the international trade in general? And how can you determine it and calculate it? So this theoretical basis, I think we need to go back to it, like to Marx, to Lenin, because there are a lot of answers there that they can tell us. We analyzed the Western theories of convergence from the position of the critics, but actually its preparation, its analysis, and there are a lot of very useful things there. So regarding the practical activity that we have nowadays, it's evident for us that global processes of the redistribution of resource points into the points of the maximum consumption and the high concentration of human resources, big markets like China, Asia, India, and so on. It's evident for us. So that's why for Russia and for the Eurasian Economic Council, of course, it's actually clear that the European model is not so urgent and irrelevant anymore. So that's why this resource will go to the east. If we speak about the sustainable development, SG and so on, there are a lot of motives there that are connected with the UN, with sustainable development. And this sustainable development, as a result, will be based on the human capital. If we have 4 billion people who live in the East, so it means that the whole ideology means we need to go to the East with the resources. So on practice, one of the first things, very important public union of banks that we have nowadays, it grew a lot because only these structures can minimize this political risk for the political regulators. So we need to take it into the work of associations, and it's necessary to make it one of the priority. You should not be ashamed of it because communications like this political communication at the level of BA and central bank and so on. So of course it correlates better with the risks that we have nowadays. The second part of the question, so because of these transformation things, we need to determine not the fields, but the points of growth. So the points where we can form the new energetics and new magnetism, new energy to accumulate the practice, the new business practice, and to show it at the current one. So that's why I would like to mention the International Financial Center of Astana in Kazakhstan and the Free Economic Zone at the border with China in Almaty. So these initiatives in Kazakhstan were initiated quite long time ago. These steps that were made by President Nazarbayev, I mean the change of constitution law of Kazakhstan, and we, basing on the Expo 2012, created the International Center of Astana. So it is an application of IFCD, so Free Financial Center of Dubai, and is connected with Hong Kong and with certain stock exchange in England. So to say international law, we used to call it like this. So there is now a high initiative to create a new matrix, industrial matrix, near the border of the international cooperation. For 3,000 hectares at the border with China in Almaty, and it has all the infrastructure, including also the international field of dry ports. So it's a new practice of using traditional ways of international trade on the continent. So seaport and this status will be used, and the tools of international trade that are based on the sea law and on all the traditions that formed the basic rules of the World Trade Organization will go to the continent. There are their own risks there. It can be the railway station, it can be some vehicle transport, and the necessity to bring together different railways and so the regulatory activities in the industries where these goods are promoted or the services promoted. So when we accumulate the continental law that can be the model, that can be the standard, that can be clear and simple, is also a very important task, like to prepare the traditional rules of international trade that are based on the sea law with all the demands for the insurance and all these regulatory activities that Russia has nowadays. Because in the matrix of continental transport, we will form our own insurance companies, we can form our own matrix of custom. It's just necessary to do it. English people had just more time, so we need to do it. And to do it, we need to determine these points where we can come together to do it so that it will be effective. It cannot be just the theoretical development, it should be based on business. So there are two evident points like Agos, the International Financial Center Astana. Regarding the border trade, that will also develop on the line of north and south. It requires the new cooperation in the Caspian Sea region. So the Caspian region will really become the center of Eurasia. Gumilyov actually analyzed the development of Tursk world and Eurasian world starting with the Caspian region. So the International Division of Labor and the space positioning and climate, it's logically then is integrated in the structure of analysis where we have this point, this centers Eurasia. So it's evident for us where can we solve the problems of product safety and where do we have too many energetic resources. And it's evident for us how should we organize the infrastructure and transport ways, and where should we start all these overlaps in the law. Actually, as far as I understand, it's necessary to notice two things. These paradoxes and these discussions are formed in a multiple field regarding the linear discussions. So we are taking the basic variants from different levels, then we will always get the discussion and the stopper. So we don't need to try to solve this questions logically and in the linear form. We need to do just what business does and to understand the significance of business. Like it is effective when it makes profit, when it forms the new cost. There is also a question actually how to form this new cost. And then it's necessary to understand the regulations of those processes that we have now when we create the regional economics and when we fortify the sovereignty. Why? Because we have a risk to close it and to ignore those processes, global processes that is not possible to bring back because of the information revolution and technological revolution. We have a lot of tools. First of all, we have a digital tool, and one of the basic questions is the financial law in the accounting of savings, and maybe we should go back to the accounting of, for example, bills of exchange. So it will also create more safety for the banks. So then there will be the institutes of arbitrage, and they will not take a decision to credit and to create a conflict with the political situation. We need to change the centers of the storage, the centers that will minimize the risks for such deals as elements of the saving path. So we need to form the real saving bank. We should not make it a task to make them commercial. No, it just should be a fund for the minimization of risks for commercial banks. These are very simple things, and it's necessary to provide them with a public field. Maybe not at the legal level, but the public associations and business structures, they have the authority and the reputation and sufficient political relations to minimize some certain problem elements. So regarding the set of tools, I think we have quite enough of them. Regarding the points where we can combine all these tools, the processes of institutes, we also have them. I mentioned two of them. And I think that we can create something very similar in the Caspian region. So I will offer Kazakhstan as a country where that is not a big competitor for Russia or for China or for Islamic world. So it can be a very big crossroad that will support it, will support the resource basis, and also has the very long history of cooperation. This is some certain offers and we are ready for it. So if we analyze the aspects, any aspects that we have nowadays in the political situation, then yes, we have the decision, we have enough tools. The most important thing is to understand them in the correct way and to find the points where we can solve them. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing all these painful things that the working banker has. So I already said that you are also participating in the work of the business council. Everyone will have the opportunity to speak with him during the coffee break or if you stay for the plenary session. But of course, you really have the subjects to think about, also including the International Financial Center, Astana, and Hargo Zone, that I think that in the region where he works, it is Almaty region. The president of Kazakhstan, President Tokayev, said that this practice of creation of such zones as Kazakhstan's Chinese zone, where Bakhbek has his own field where he is ready to place those who want to work in this region. But the Kazakhstan side wanted to create these zones, maybe not one, but even two zones, at the border of Kazakhstan and Russia, so this borderline. So I think that it's a very interesting idea and very perspective idea, and I would like to say a few more words. So we actually have a very strict schedule because we're already delayed, and I cannot give you the opportunity to ask questions to the participants. So that's why, please use my assistants. They are here, they are at the back, or you can just give me the notices in the written form. We will try, if it is possible, to catch the speakers and to give them the opportunity to answer. And if you work online, if you listen to us online, so then please, could you send the questions in the written form to the chat and my assistants will help me and give them to me, so we'll have the opportunity to discuss them in the future. I would like to say thank you once again. So I can say that Mr. Bachelbeck really had very interesting speech. I would like to give the floor to our next speaker. This is Andrei Klepich, and he is the chief economist and one of the head of VTB of the Russian Federation. Or no, not VTB, but actually Bank for Development and Foreign Economic Affairs of the Russian Federation. He's a very famous person, and it's interesting to listen to his opinion, not only as to the main economist of the main Bank for Development, but also to someone who has a great practical experience. And I think his speech is very interesting. So thank you for such an introduction. I even don't know what to say now because I really need to comply with this. So first of all, I would like to thank you for the invitation. I will try to maybe cover a few questions. When Alexander started to speak, then he said that sustainable development is a very relevant topic nowadays. And of course, business has its own position. We need to understand that the approach to sustainable development is like no sustainable development at all. So it's something different. It's something that we could discuss before February or last year or before, like we did before. But the world is in the phases of unsustainable development. I mean the fragmentation of the financial system, and I mean the break in general, the break of the world geopolitical break and the international financial system. Because, yes, because actually there was no such cases that Russia and SWIFT, such countries, were excluded. It's not just the GDP 3%, but for key markets regarding the carbon, for example, it can be 10%. It never happened before.
And now we see that still that the world is that not only the conflict but other problems are very deep impact on the world, and the recession which we have now, it can be short or maybe it can be long term. That's also very possible. And we also see that we faced a very deep energy crisis. First of all, because of the sanctions, we don't know how long it would last. The prices would go down, the oil and the gas, and we would see how would be winter in Europe. But still, we enter the high prices on the energy and the limitations and problems of logistics. And this is a very serious barrier of economic development, especially we see that in Europe, let alone the developing countries. And the agenda of sustainable development is wider than ESG. It was mentioned today, but if we take the global goals of United Nations, the world now is far from them, much further when it's 1974 these goals were initially set, because the poverty in the world is reducing thanks to China and India as well, but the famine is increasing, and the problem is focused on the adaptation to the climate, the pure water resources. It's a very acute problem. So this set of all these ecological challenges, it became very strict and significant. That's why we must understand which model of development we need to choose for Russia, for China, for our key partners in Eurasia, for India, for Kazakhstan and other countries, and what should we do with the support of developing countries. Maybe also several moments. It's clear that the problem that dollar and euro for Russia and for many companies became toxic, though we have a big export of capital, the billions, 200 billions, 300 billions, within 3-5 years, 7 billions we would export abroad. But still, there are the questions about how to develop and support the system of calculation in national currencies, in soft currencies. And you are more experts than me, but my opinion is that our desire and our talk are a little bit in front of what really happens. And in order to make here the change, we need to search and to find the alternative solutions. Maybe as as Mr. Baisidov mentioned, Vaxels, cryptocurrencies, soft currencies. Maybe this is transfer and establishment of regional national currencies. And other countries, as you like China, they're interested in yuan, for example, but regional currencies like Shanghai Organization, they can also the topic of euro. But nevertheless, deep integration, it puts the problem onto interregional currencies. But this is the topic which we are going to discuss, to search for, and that's the first what arises here. This the system of calculation and the establishment of system instead of SWIFT, because most of the Russian companies and banks are out of SWIFT, and even those who are not under sanction, they still face the problems. Russian Chinese systems, they don't have the normal system, and we need to develop the mechanism how to approve the contract, maybe with Telex. But this mechanism of trust of mutual contracts that should be established, and not to wait when everything would be calm in the world, because it's difficult to foresee how much time that would take. And the second moment, which I would like also to highlight, is I maybe didn't want to talk much about the green financing and ESG and the climate. It's quite clear that that is development, that's a reality. And now we have obligational green bonds and all the carbon trades and discounts which are in Sakhalin project. But it's clear that for Russia and for many developing countries, also those which established the 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 club of just 1 second. It's China, India, and other countries which join this. Vulnerable forum, but for us it's more perspective, not the green projects. Wind energy, solar energy, all of them are developing in China and in Russia as well. But the projects which are adaptation project connected to the absorption of CO2 and greenhouse gases, and the topic of availability of the energy, because the expensive energy is not available even for us, let alone the most of developing countries. And finding the balance for the demands of the emission of the greenhouse gases and CO2, that's the task which must be solved. And many things depend on the mutual efforts. That's why it seems to me that's a very important thought, which Mr. Lee in the very beginning mentioned, the agenda of the standard. SG standard. It's very important, but we do not have any standards. We have particular principles, we have particular methodology, and we have even provision on the standard which is developed in OSD, but it seems to me that what we develop, this is for Shanghai and BRICS countries, that association could play a very significant role. We should develop our standard, but the principles of sustainable development, which corresponds for the developing countries. On one side, we are all developing, but we are in different conditions: China, India, Russia, Iran, Indonesia. And I think that we don't need to wait. We must use experience of OSD, but not to transfer one-to-one the responsible financing. We must consider that and the export of our goods. We need to develop our standard of behavior. For example, VAB has the policy of sustainable development, and maybe here we can, together with institution of development, we must develop our own principles and attitudes of sustainable development, which would correspond our demands, and maybe we would have our own system, because international agencies would have no rating in Russia and from the point of ESG and sustainable development, but we must establish not only Russian but BRICS or Shanghai Organization system which we can accept inside our community. From the point of the recommendations, with the support of association, together with the union, we should arrange such work, and my colleagues and me personally, we are ready to participate. It's very important if we talk about the financial calculations and payments. And we cannot make the calculations and transactions in soft currencies without the risks uptaken by the central bank. I hope that they would share their opinion, because they should take the risk, for example, on rupiah currency, on other currencies. So there should be some union or agreement between the central banks that also would be very good to develop our joint decision. Because now, despite the 8 months, we didn't have the normal. And it's not the substitution. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Andrei. And I think that many of things which were today discussed in our session, I think they were somehow mentioned by other report makers, in particular the question of the ratings. And I think that it would be natural to the representative of National Rating Agency to raise the question, very, very important, as well as the question of the currencies, digital currencies, on the problems of the usage of national and soft currencies, which was also mentioned today. Very important topic, and I see here some particular decisions already. And I would like, after this speech, quite a global one in the frames of our agenda, to turn the floor to Mr. Sergei Dubinin, the person who is known by those who are in this audience, and both as the head of the Central Bank of the Russian Federation. That's why the last idea about that some risks on the soft currencies can take or should take the central bank or some alliance or a reunion of Minister of Finance and central bank, I would address this directly to the Sergei, who is also the head of one of the head of Committee for International Cooperation and the Russian Union of Entrepreneurs, which and actually he is the one of the organizers of this meeting. I would like to express my gratitude that he helped also in the negotiations with the speakers, and he led gather a very representative team. Thank you very much, Oleg. Dear colleagues, the honorable colleagues, because of the limitations, I would concentrate on the key points from my opinion. I don't think that we need to launch comments. I think that the slides. I would not comment each slide. They're in English. I think that would be available later, but I would like to start from my point of view to focus on the problem that today it's very actual. The question of for us, for the Russian economy, how to stabilize our own financial system. And we talk not only about the banking problems, all the problems of the market of capital and income, not the market of the available and treasuries. The because the banking credit is also the financial market, so it's part. But we are talking about the budget, and the point is that it's obvious that in the present conditions, external conditions, our economy cannot balance itself independently. That's why we need quite a clear interaction. And the previous speechmaker addressed that the central bank and the Minister of Finance, so the budget organization and the reserves of the central bank and the market institutions. He addressed both. The initiative can be taken from the market institutions, but at the same time, the demand for the interaction uh, you can address with ideas, but the resource, the administrative resources are now on the side of the state bodies, and you must consider this. And with this, you need to enter the external markets because the first the first factor which defined today our presence in the financial segment are, of course, what happens in the frames of special military operation and what happens in the frame of financial sanctions. Financial sanctions is the main type of the sanctions on a short-term distance because they were introduced based on the financial crisis, which would become the systematic and lead to destruction of the banking system. We managed to avoid this to stop the attack of the customers of the banks. The deposits are left in the bank, but we had to make as a prey the free convertibility of the ruble currency, and all the limitations are in currency, and practically they actually stopped ruble currency as the free converting currency. The exchanging rates are different. We have official one, but not all the operations in the country are carried on this exchange rate, but on contrary, and not only in exchange table, but also by business deals. The diversity of this rate, this is administrative problem, I should say. And we need also to move to, and this is also mentioned today, on the soft currencies. And what is crucially important, the system, the situation of the ambiguity. This also is about the bank and customer relations. With the bankers, I talk a lot in different conditions and two general provisions. The first one, the bankers are worried, first of all, because of the state of the payability of their customers. They clearly understand that the banks cannot live better than the corporative customers live. The wholesale somehow, yes, also, but the proportion is the depth of the wholesale is twice less than the corporative customers. And the banks are ready to interact through the system of internal ratings, through the provision of the credits with payment installments, restructurization of debts, but they would like to get some compensation and support. And in this part, everything depends on the central bank. And of course, the central banks makes a step forward, so the opportunities of the balance, on the balance of the bank to consider on the old prices, the treasuries and values, that of course minimize the load and the burden of the banking sector. So there are some alleviations, as we say, but the warrant is from the side of the budget, especially on the sectors and segments which need to be developed despite the low margin. Because that's an illusion that the orders in the interest of national defense, that this is the golden city for the banks, and the credits for these goals are at a low rate, and without this you cannot work. The benefits are provided to the companies, of course, but here there is a point of interaction which actually we must find. We must find a solution between financial sector and sectors of state non-markets. In particular, that's a good idea, and that was also mentioned. That's the capital of the banks because of the special obligations issue.
So these were state loans and they could be placed in the capital of banks, and so in this way they could become a part of capital management and risk management of the banks. So in this way, then they can become really, these securities can really get the value. Nowadays, of course, there is a reverse process that is also very important, the mobilization of the money for the investment of our corporate sector, our industry, and mobilization of the money to then fuel the Russian budget. That's why we also need to find the balance, because nowadays, if we forecast that, not even forecast, but it's already clear that in the middle of the year, banks had about 1.5 trillion of rubles. Of course, they were not widespread in a homogeneous way. But if Sberbank says that in September they have 50 billions, 1.5 trillions, and 50 billions of net profit, everything else was eaten by losses, so they just now managed to overcome the situation, and this is typical. I cannot give you the numbers because we don't know the numbers publicly, but once Gref stated the number, it's good. It's good that he gave this information, and at the end of the year, it's possible that 2.53 trillions of losses, that this will be the losses that the bank will have. Yes, they will not be spread homogeneously, but 75% of all the assets of the bank sector go just to 10 banks in this country, then we can understand that losses will also be concentrated. Though maybe it will be more difficult for small banks and it will be easier for big banks with the help of those mechanisms that I mentioned. On the other hand, we can see that these are the official numbers of deficit or state budget. So these are the numbers that show about 3% of GDP, the deficit, 2.53%. It's necessary to cover it. On the one hand, it's necessary to cover it from the means of the foundation. And yes, we have there these resources, but they are not liquid. So let's be frank, it will be emission money to the economy, or also with the help of the state debt. It's very, very small. In this country, it's surprising. It's about 20% of GDP. The USA has 100% of GDP or even more. Japan, 200, 250% of GDP. But we have the reserve here. But then it starts to compete with the debts that can be placed on the same markets that our corporations try to do. So we need to cooperate here. What should be the volume? What should be the price? How these resources should be used? So I would like to stress that all these problems, they are for a long time. If we go forward and if we show to you the graphs, so these are the evaluations of what can happen in 2023. They were more pessimistic for 2022, more optimistic for 2023, but now the situation changed. And now we can see that in 2022, GDP decreased not so much, but in 2023, it will be even more than it was in 2020. Yes, we can argue about the numbers, but there is the fact that it's a long process and we have to live in these conditions for a very long time. We need to understand that it's not 2, 3 years. This is my personal then evaluation. It will be maybe even 5 years of very difficult financial conditions. So I mean here not increasing GDP and the growth of GDP, but it's necessary to restructure our economy and it's necessary to use all the concentrated financial resources in a reasonable way, but basing on the market conditions. So you should not do something just because of the order, because there is some administrative order. It should be in the cooperation between the bankers, corporations, and the state officials. So this restructuring, it's not that the central bank just has very interesting name. The structural transformation of the Russian economy. This is something that we really need nowadays. So I would like maybe to stop here, and it will go on very painfully, and I think that for the next 5 years, it will be a very interesting topic for our work. So thank you. Sergey, thank you. It's true. We also have the long-term forecast for 5 years. For us, it's already long-term. That is already paradoxical. And this is true not only for banks, but also for the finance of science, production. So this is one of the products that you mentioned. Thank you. I would like to give the floor to Mikhail Yershov, the Chief Director of Financial Research of the Institute of Energetics and Finance, the professor of the Financial University at the President of the Russian Federation. So he is online, so can we show him? Thank you, great. We can see you. So hello, dear colleagues, can you hear me? Because I do not hear you. Yes, we can hear you. Hello, everyone. We can hear you. We can hear you. Yes, now I can hear you. We can hear you very well, so you can start. Good. Hello, dear colleagues. I would like to say a few words and to show a few slides, if it's possible. So today, several speakers said very interesting things. So thank you for this interesting roundtable. And I would like to say that the stronger the national economy is, the more effective is the basis of the sustainable development in the world. If we speak here about the tasks of national economy, yes, of course, we need to have more stable money, lower then more liquidity of the economy and the national currency. This is also very important because volatility actually is in the way of the economic development. Can you see my slides? So here you can see the information about the national currency.
Нормально, да, да, нормально.
So this is also the global slide, and it shows how the leading countries like Russia, we can add here more countries if it's possible, and they form their national currency. So here we can see how all the dollars are formed and all the Japanese yenas in the central bank, and also we as the central bank. So sorry, the slides are not changed, so one moment.
Я же говорил, не надо просить. Коллеги, чувствую, человек ушел. Лучше.
So the best is the enemy of the good. So we need to bring him back to the screen. Okay. Yes, now it's okay. So you can see three national banks, the United States, Japan, and Russia, and the liquidity of all rubles of all Japanese yenas. We can see that these countries has a great element of the internal growth, internal formation of monetization, everything on the basis of national priorities. And so we are the country where we depend more on the external sphere, and that's why the system is less stable. So the next slide shows how nowadays in the world the mechanism of the formation of tools very actively works. So we mean the tools here. This is the first tool. The most stable is the internal basis. Should be 3%, 5% at least as a trend. Then the more stable the national economies are. Here you can see what happened to the tool during the pandemic. Many other national banks participated more and more in the purchase of their own state securities. You can see here the percentage of state debts. For example, in Poland, 50% are in their debt. Croatia, Lithuania, the United States, like trillions of dollars. One third of this bank is also on the state balance. Japan, one third is on the balance of the state bank. regarding the long-term securities with long commission and with the foundation for the industrial development. Of course, this is the basis for the national systems. The more stable they are implemented here and in the world, the better is the sustainable development in the world. So that's why, of course, we need to understand that these are the important elements of the economic politics in every time, and many countries actually has these approaches. Now, when we have a lot of tension in the world, and it becomes the most important tool in policy, so that's why we need to remember about it when we form the sustainable borders, not only in the economy, but also in the economy at the border with policy. So we understand that the more stable is the economy, there will be another structure, financial systems. If we compare it with the system where all economies depended on itself. So we need to have other configurations here of finances in these conditions. Then there is a very important question that was also asked today. So yes, okay, there are the tools. Yes, we have these tools. But how should we invest these instruments, and where should we invest the money? What are the points of growth? Our colleagues also had this question, and I think that we will ask these questions more. We need to have very, very balanced structural politics, and then there is the risk to cause inflation. The central bank actually says in its project, it writes that the state costs then make a contribution in the expanding of economy, then it will not increase the pressure on the inflation. So we can really think about it a few more moments. And I would like to agree with them, and it's really necessary to work with them. When we calculate in soft currencies new calculations of the system, yes, we need to do it maybe at the initial state when it happens to the central banks and regulators, and we need to help this hedge and to start these calculations to decrease the risks for the participants. And then we can also think about the market makers who, at the initial stages, having the resources, can help the market to form then these calculations, the initial stages of the functioning of this market. And then the system will become more stable. When it will be developed, then this part will be decreased. But first of all, it's necessary to give the impulse, to give the maybe some benefits and interest rates. And these tools will help then the market of soft currencies, to be launched. So we can solve all of this. So it's the end of my presentation, because I don't want to delay other participants. I think that our partners and Russia, they have a lot of tools and mechanisms that we can use more effectively. We can use in general to lay the basis and to form the mechanisms of sustainable development. And such discussions as we have now, they are very useful, not because it's just intellectual opinion exchange, but because they help to take some decisions that will then cause that we will make some certain steps and form the positive environment for our cooperation in this difficult time. So thank you. So thank you. I need to cut the time for moderation. Because we're out of the schedule, I want to give the floor to Andrei Lisitsyn, the head of the financial policy and financial markets of the Russian Union of Entrepreneurs and one of the leaders of the leading committees.
Финансовой политики, по платежным отношениям и прочее, прочее. Вам слово.
So I would like to give the floor to you. So press the button, please. Hello. We really do a lot of work together with a lot of aspects that are connected with the financial policy and the development of calculations, financial tools. I would like now to discuss a very, very small segment, but very important from our point of view. If we speak about the sustainable development, so I agree with the previous speaker. Sustainable development is not possible without the presence of the tools that are basic and structural. So then we can make the transactions and calculations. Not to discuss the numbers too much, we did a big research at the beginning of summer and the positions of the business, what priorities we can have. The study is published, so I will not speak a lot about it. I will mean only a few trends that we can use as a priority. So actually, the money in general, this is the information. And if we solve the question with information exchange, then we can provide the movement of finance and all the goods in a more effective way. So that's why when we did this research, we anyway tried to put into our questionnaires what are the tools, what are the mechanisms, or the company that the company thinks is a priority for it. So we can see that prioritization is everything that is connected with information exchange. So for example, when we ask the company what are the tools that are necessary now as a priority, so then and what are the priority for you in the future, and then the growth of these tools in the future. Usually they mean the letter of credit, and it's not possible without the exchange of information, especially if we speak about the international deals, smart contracts. It's also is based on the information exchange, and it can go together only with the automation. And also the next example is
И цифровые валюты.
It was today mentioned about the cryptocurrencies and digital currencies, but this is more about expectations. People do not understand how it works, but they want to work. And we mainly talk about the barriers which we identify. Almost 100%, 99% are sanction limitations, and that's obvious that we asked Russian companies, and Russian companies paid much attention to this. But the second limitation, this is also system of financial information SWIFT when it was cancelled or switched off on territory of Russia, and many of this are connected because there is the break of the chain of the payable information exchange. This is one of the key problems which the companies face. The next block, which also illustrates the topic which I mentioned, is the which decisions do we see, and one of the key decisions is that one of the key decisions, I should say, I mean there are several of them. Mainly, they are connected to necessity to establish and enlarge the usage of the system of transition of financial information by the central bank. The second block, this is about the information about the mechanisms which can be used by the Russian companies. Out of this, we have taken the conclusion that despite we continue several years or even many years that we say that we want to develop this system of clearing, international clearing, it is necessary to develop the systems of the usage of calculation of clearing units. First of all, digital ones. We also understood that before when we suggested this this is a target idea, but in order to achieve it, we need to create many blocks which are necessary to the function of this clearing system. And this is the information exchange, the assessment of the economic parameters. Because when we were positioning this idea, when we compared it to the Soviet ruble currency, and this was existing in the planned economy. In the present condition, this is possible, but this is possible based on the systematic and powerful processing and gather of information, application of the methodology of AI, and the question of join into the system, that's a very political question. So that's why when we talk about such political questions, we need to, understanding the goal, we need to move slowly and step by step. And now we consider that there are crucial decisions without which we cannot move forward as the entrepreneurs. That's why we work out the solutions connected to the gathering of processing of information. And now we are making the project of a platform in which the companies could, in confidential regime, I would explain later, that they could channel the information in online about those directions and currencies and the time frame, the period when they need it on the calculation directions, I mean, which are jurisdictions particularly. The second one is gathering from the side of the providers of the services, not only the banks, but financial and technical companies, which would create the offers for the currencies and other directions of calculation. And here we mainly talk about the gathering of statistic information, but in online regime. But the goal of it with the system could at the exit show the aggregated data, prioritization for the companies of on the general volume, and that would help to understand the general interest, to understand the priorities for the companies, and at the same time, when in analog and two-way regime, that could also help to lead the companies on the channels, potential channels, and regulators to inform on the problems, mismatches on the in these channels, on necessity to enlarge, to develop the channel and the demand on these or those channels. So this idea, which we are going to finalize from the point of the technical task, we are gathering the opinions and positions. But it seems to us that if we go through this step, if we launch this step, we would get not only this statistic information at the average temperature in hospital, which we say we gathered in May or June, but we would talk to our colleagues from abroad, to our financial organizations, to regulators on the topic of what is in priority from the point of business. So because of this, or due to this, I would like to pay attention to one more connection. We don't have the goal to make it commercial, but the system is combining very well with what is suggested on the market quite actively. These are different services of financial and technical companies which make the information and technical interaction. So they gather the information from the payer and the receiver, and they recommend the route of the carrying out this payment of the transaction. But this is bilateral service. It's similar to the activity not only in Russia, the payment aggregation, they get the information, then they distribute the information. It may be from the customer to the receiver of the payment and vice versa. This is similar to this, and we would like to pay attention and to give the green light from the side of the Russian regulator to these activities, applying the standards in order to avoid the risks, but we should give the road
Потому что это позволит
because that would help to establish the layer, the foundation for implementation of the ideas on creation of clean mechanisms, also in numbers. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much. Thank you. Dear colleagues, we move forward, and I would like to turn the floor to Grigory Gruzinov, the head of the International Investment Bank in Moscow. Hello, dear colleagues. Today I wanted to tell you about the sustainable development from the point of international financial organizations. I would ask you not to mix that up with macrofinancial organizations. As today was mentioned, the goals of sustainable development were born on the United Nations space, and the developed countries and international organizations became the main providers of these ideas on the markets of developing countries. At the present moment, we have almost 20 international financial organizations which have agenda of sustainable development goals, and almost 12 were working on the Russian market. At the present moment, at the first glance, there are 4 international organizations left which somehow presented on the Russian market. So the promotion of financing for these goals, the market is free, and it's very important. And we see this interest from the side of commercial banks and from the side of national banks, so that this niche should be filled in. At the same time, there should be kept the high demands and criteria of evaluation and assessment of projects, clear criteria for sustainability, and what is more important, the opportunity to provide the long-term financing and financing at low rates. What the international organization financial sector was different. If we talk about the status of international financial institutions, they are overnational or supranational. And until the March of this year, all this introduced sanctions and limitations, they were studied more as operation limitations. In March, the situation has changed drastically, and almost all the international institutions which work in Russia, which have among their shareholders not friendly countries, they faced with impossibility to carry out their operations on territory of our country. They were recognized as not friendly ones, agents. They deposit the investment, the opportunity to make the property operation, they were blocked on territory of our country. And on the territory of non-friendly countries, the institutions where the Russian Federation presented also faced with big sanction risks and limitations which were introduced from the counter agents. This situation lasted 8 months. Unfortunately, not all the international financial institutions preserved their presence in Russia, but those who are left. And there is a decree of President of Russia, which is making free Russian sanction the institutions which where the Russian Federation keeps its presence. Among them, the International Investment Bank. Which directions do we see in a part of work, and how the situation made an influence on us? First of all, as many Russian counter agents, we started to orient to friendly countries. And frankly saying, our expectations were not satisfied, as our colleague from Kazakhstan told today. There is very deep analysis of geopolitical situation and reputation of Russia. Over compliance attitude, we should say, when it is where they are more restrained of making the cooperation or making operation, they take the break for additional analysis. The way
Пройти очень быстро.
which we're supposed to go through quickly with our friendly counter agents and to install the infrastructure which was used in our not friendly countries, it turned out not to be so fast. and the international financial institution, they need to split clearly the activities which they make in the Russian Federation, separate in the part of country agents and the infrastructure and the activities which are for other countries. This is also done in order to avoid the additional reputation risks and in the part of transactions. If we talk about what could help us to preserve and to develop our activities in the Russian Federation, then first of all, we need to achieve the agreements on the level of the friendly countries on the establishment the necessary infrastructure, necessary platforms, on the currency exchange, on the investments, on carrying out the financial transactions. It is also needed on the level of governments of friendly countries to achieve the agreements on establishment and integration of investment projects, which also international financial institutions can join, which continue to work with the Russian Federation. Considering the Russian market, international financial institutions have the situation that in the frame of the implementation of measures of support of financial market, the central bank within this year has provided quite a big set of alleviations and solutions, different quotas in the relation of publication of reports, additional access to funding, which international financial institutions were deprived of. And because of this, we ask the Russian regulator to pay attention to the international segment and for their support in order to continue the activity in Russia, also to put the rights and quotas which are provided to other players of the market. Thank you very much for attention. I hope that I was in time. Yes, thank you very much. According to our agenda, we have a speech of Igor Shiko. Do we have him in the audience? But I have only one question. We have representative of Ulf Schneider. Just let me know when Ulf would connect us because he is from Armenia now, from Baku. So, if you don't mind, he is in airport. We turn the floor to Ulf Schneider, and after that, would be Russian speakers. Thank you very much. Can you actually let the Mr. Schneider be with us? Hello, dear colleagues. Thank you very much. I hope that you can hear me well. That's perfectly we can hear you. Today, I welcome all of you from Baku. I am in the airport and I hope that the quality would be good. I would be boarding. I would be having boarding soon. Thank you very much that I have opportunity for today to make a speech. Today the topic is very very important for me. That's why unfortunately I cannot be presented personally, but the topic is to make the bridges, not the walls. And for me, it's a very very important topic. And in the mission of my company, it is written that we are building the bridges in the business and in the life between the West and East. I am going to share my presentation right now. I hope that you can see that. Today I have a topic. It's about the bank for small and medium entrepreneurs for Eurasia. And such bank, I would like to share the German experience. And first of all, such a bank is a very important for the development of as a driver of economic development, as a driver of innovations. And in my experience, I should say that this bank, which is supporting small and medium enterprises, this is very important for development of the suppliers which work for big business. This is also very good for the competition And normally this average and small business is attracting good experts and is a good employer. And also for the state it's also good because small and medium business is a very good taxpayer. Such bank which supports small and medium business is very good for interaction between the business and the state bodies, for the economic development, for all the parameters. This is also support dynamic growth of economy, and it's also very good for the international recognition of the national economy. In Germany, we have such a bank which is called KfW, and this is a state-owned bank, but it is supporting small and medium business, not state business, private business. That bank functions in Germany, and Germany, first of all, this is a German government which developing the promotion. They give the particular goals, for example, that small and medium business should be supported, especially innovative business, which generates a lot of working places. Such goals the government of Germany is showing. And also they allocate the external meanings which later the state bank, the small medium enterprise bank, gives as the loans for small and medium business. But it's very important that this bank, this KfW, it's not is not directly communicating with the small medium enterprises of business, but this is communication through the local commercial banks, for example, with the local banks.
So it is typical for banks, for small business, and actually they do not speak with the state banks, but they speak with their regional and commercial banks. And then the curator can offer some certain plans that they got from the economy, and then they can discuss with a certain entrepreneur. So then the commercial bank can give all these loans, and they are either financed by the Mittelstandsbank or they can offer, they can guarantee these loans. What programs do we have? We have innovation, digitalization, and energy and environment. We also have such categories as agriculture. So I would like to offer for us, and I think that it is interesting, a very interesting experience, the experience that we have and that we can adapt in Eurasian countries. So I would like to offer for our association. So first of all, to see what are the examples in these countries that we have, how do they function, and then to attract a few experts from those Mittelstands banks, banks for small and medium business, and then together with them to develop the concept. I know some experts very well, and to develop the concepts with them and then to present them to different governments, to different state bodies. So, for example, I started to present it in the concept of, I started to present it in Astana, also the financial center, And they said they think that this is a very interesting concept. But now it's just the preliminary form. I presented such a draft. So I think that we as an association can develop this concept in the future, and it will be a very powerful concept. So I think that this is a bank that is connected with SME, and it will be very good if it will be focused on the attraction of foreign investors, who can start the production. The production in these countries, Eurasian countries. So I think it will be an interesting concept. So a few words about my company, and actually I think you know me very well, very shortly. We have 16 offices, and yesterday I opened a new office in Baku, in Azerbaijan, and I opened a new office in Kyrgyzstan. I will open a new office in Georgia, in the Central Asia. So I have there altogether. So I have offices in 6 countries: Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, and my country will grow in this way. I will be very glad if among you we will have those people who are interested and who will work with me at this concept with Mittelstands Bank, and this is the bank for the development of small and medium business. Thank you, my colleagues, and I'm sorry that I'm so short because in 7 minutes uh, I have another meeting. So thank you and have a nice day. Thank you, Olaf, and have a nice flight. And thank you for your group. You have very useful experience of Schneider Group in Russia and CIS countries. So I think what that you offer to use the experience of Germany with Mittelstand Bank, and I think it's very useful in Eurasia, not only in Russia. And European Bank also had some certain experience when he started the bank here. So I think that this is one of the direction of work, the work for the business association. And I would like now to give the floor to Igor Shikov, who is the counselor, and in Afanasyev and partners. So I would like you to stick to the schedule because a little bit delayed. So I would like to start with a small joke. Ul Schneider, when he spoke now, he said, I will now be put to jail, like something like, uh, I'll be actually like put to prison, but it's not put to prison. It was like I was invited to the land, but it's the same in Russian. So I immediately had the lowest feeling inside me. I need to help him. Next, please. Working slide. So I would like to tell you in advance that the view that I would like to share with you actually has some professional deformation. So I'm a lawyer and I can see the circulation of the capital, not from the point of view of the payment tools. So for us, it's just the reverse side of what we're doing for the economical operations. And we are invited into the economical operations because we accompany our clients at all the stages of all the processes, and we accompany them when there was the restructuring of the business, when there was relocation of business, and we accompany medium business and small business, and we have a lot of physical beings, and we then accompany their family capitals in Russia or abroad. So that's why I cannot speak about macroeconomical things, and I don't have this vision. I don't know what will happen in the future, but I can see it from the ground. So from the ground, I can say that we woke up in another legal reality, because if we have a look at the situation, we can see that there are a lot of new factors, and these factors mostly have some restriction character, and they really influence the possibility of making the basic operations that then in future will be accompanied by the circulation of the capital. You know, all these limits, these are the sanctions that were introduced in the United States and Europe. This is also the answer of Russia, who also introduced counter sanctions. They are mostly for us these regulations that actually are in the way in the implementation of the agricultural policy. You know that president's orders also provide a lot of restrictions in the capital circulation. We also need to stress the strengthening role of the central bank and other state organizations who had the right to interpret president's orders. So it depends, of course, on the interpretation of the central bank or the government commission of those questions that we have in our activity. But on the other hand, we can see that there is one more important factor, and this is the strictness of compliance bank. I mean here not only the Russian procedures, but also the procedures that are done of foreign banks. And we can see that it was really a very, very strict approach. So our client, for example, could create trust or foundation in Liechtenstein and bring his capital for the future family planning abroad to develop the program. But now we can understand that all the instruments that we are used to use, it is not available now. So it means that most of our clients go back and then they try to find some replacements for the usual business constructions. They go away from offshores, they try to find some tools in other legal spheres. It can be the Arabian Emirates, Turkey, or maybe some other states, some neighborhood states such as Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Armenia, and so on. I think that you all remember this spaghetti western by Sergio Leone, Good, Bad, Angry. So now all the countries, from the regulation point of view, they are divided into these subgroups. We have good countries, those who are not on this blacklist. We have bad countries who are on this blacklist, and we also need to put into a separate category as those subjects who are in good groups, but they are controlled by bad guys. So go on. So here we can see a list of countries who are not our friends. It's a little bit surprising that Northern Macedonia is there, but not Serbia and Albania, for example. Next slide. So first of all, we had a situation that in this sphere that traditionally was very popular for our work, structuring and selling of business, reallocation of business. So this year, we cannot just make a deal. Any deal now, when we buy a company or sell a company, so we need to analyze the landscape that is now set by presidential orders. What do we see? We can see that there were several orders that restricted the circulation of shares of participation in the Russian business. So without the allowance of the special presidential committee, we cannot close these deals. So first of all, if we speak about the share in the Russian company or the share of the Russian company, so we cannot close the deal between the resident and the foreigner from unfriendly country. We cannot just close the deal between two foreigners who are from unfriendly countries, or we cannot do it even if the purchaser is some friendly foreigner, but the seller is unfriendly foreigner. So all these deals, they require the permission of the state commission. But there are the exclusions, and thanks God they were introduced this year when we had really very strict limits, but they were softened by additional orders of the president. So first of all, not all bad guys are really bad. So those bad guys who are under the control of good guys who are under the control of guys, they are considered to be good as well. So then we don't need then to get the approval of the state commission, but we need to understand that it requires to reveal it fully. You need to show that this counteragent that is formally your counteragent and who is registered as an unfriendly country, that he is controlled by bad guys. So of course we speak about the Russian business because sometimes they structurize the investments in Russia through Western tools. So for example, when the investments are done through Cyprus or Luxembourg, so formally, if we want to somehow sell this business, we cannot sell it because the first level is some country that is situated and registered in an unfriendly zone. But if we can explain that it's controlled by Russian owners and Russian tax agencies have this information, I mean, just normal applications that you participate in some foreign transactions. Then we can close this deal without any problems. Then it is possible to make the deals once again when formally the counteragent is an unfriendly foreigner, but where we can show that this unfriendly foreigner is under the control of the friendly foreigner. Very simple example. So imagine that Israel investments come through some Luxembourg layer. If we open all participants up to Israel, Israel for us is a friendly jurisdiction, then the deal can be closed without problems. Next slide. When we have such challenges, we can see another layer of the problems. The text of the orders are not always clear. Very often we have a big place for the interpretation here, and actually there are a lot of lacks of information during this interpretation. They were formed with the help of the commission that came to the central bank, and they help how to use this or that order. So there are some gray zones. Just imagine that you have a task to accompany a deal for buying or selling the business in Russia, but formally in this Russian deal, the share is held by the foreigner. So you will understand it's not a friendly foreigner. He's unfriendly from the very beginning till the end. What can you do? You can try to get the permission of the state commission, but there are also other thoughts. So just imagine that some Russian investor who wants to buy this business that stayed in Russia, he thinks, okay, I will not buy the company itself, but I will buy this foreign structure that owns these shares. So it's like indirect owning of this business. So formally, these deals also cannot be done without the permission of the commission. But if it happens de facto, so if the investor, no one can actually prevent him from buying these shares in the Western jurisdiction of the foreign infrastructure that fully controls the Russian. No one can effectively control it. And we don't understand the consequences. Even in this case, the investor actually does it in the wrong way. Besides, we need to say that there is also the opposite process. Before we discuss those processes, when the control goes from one hands to other hands, but as we know, Russian people also think about investments abroad. And so, if you need to take this capital to invest it in the external investments, it was also restricted by regulations because the order of presidents actually prohibited the deals of paying for shares, and that it was said that it was done only with the allowance of the state bank. So actually, the state bank behaved, I would say, in a very liberal way because they created several standard situations, and they said that for these standard situations, I allow you not to come to me every time. Yes, okay, go to the conclusions. Yes, it's almost the end of my presentation. I want just to show a few trends that we can see. So first of all, it's the cleaning of business from foreign elements. Next slide, please. Then the second one is the going away of the foreign capital when the foreign owners try to take away the investments, and mostly just some other investors are the buyers, or maybe putting them into a separate company. Some breaking of the connection inside the concern can be elimination of freezing. And the last thing that I wanted to say, so we accompany a lot of deals at the stage of getting the permission from the Anti-Monopoly Commission or at the level of state commission. So we can see that the state commission works in a very strict mode, but there are certain parameters, so don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of this. We say that we can get the permission for these commissions. Usually it is possible, you just need to understand the rules of the game. They're quite simple, so depending on the profile of business, and also the regulator is also important here. So for pharmaceutical company, it's one regulator. For cars, it's another regulator. It is Ministry of Industry, and they give their conclusion. So, and it is aimed at the price parameter, so the deal. So foreign investors, when they go away from the Russian market, they need to give this business, but not for more than 50% of its cost. That's why you need to get the previous evaluation before this deal will be brought for the coordination to the state commission. And if the prices are favorable, then the deals will be allowed. I think that's all. Thank you. Thank you. We will ask Valery to give you this presentation. We hope he will allow us. I'm sorry that we have to press you. So we have just 30 minutes and 4 people. Okay, thank you, Igor. And now I would like to give the floor to Dmitry Mitsyaev, the responsible secretary of the Scientific Technical Council and the assistant of the Commission of Ministers for the Integration in the Macroeconomy.
I would like to refer to the previous speech. Despite the 3 degrees of president on the currency control, we have the big loss of the private capital, 300 billion, and half of them are going to the early term payment of external debt. And this is payments of the offshore holding companies. So it happens somehow. The criminals, those who make this fraud, they are working good. But in my topic, I would try to say briefly, it's clearly that in some time you will get used to something. We know that this matrix, the first share of the debt to the GDP, it's very high. Budget control of United States Congress, this forecast in 5-7 years, so it's almost too close to this exponent. And then it started the history of the higher inflation with the hyperinflation. We know that it started in the previous year. So we see that in many countries there was a stagflation. The production was almost dying, and in the year 2021, because of this monetary expansion which was carried out, that was an outstanding, and that was prepared 10 years already. In the quantity, the financial system was prepared, and it is ready for the explosion or demolition, depending on how you name it. But anyway, there are no opportunities, in my opinion, to get out of the fast as it was in 2001 and 2009, or even 2022 or 2020. And for us in the whole world, we don't have such an opportunity. What is the reason? On the attack on Europe and Germany, we see that if we take the highly technological export in Germany and China, it's 7 times more than in high technological export from United States and other countries. Okay, that's clear that Europe and Germany, first of all, the energy should be destroyed, and the China through the chips and Chinese obligations are higher than the treasuries. It's quite clear how it would happen. It's for a long time. It was studied, and Warren Buffett 15 years ago said that these derivatives are the massive destruction weapon, 1 to 100. So with the bank activities in capital, it's 1 to 10. So that out of the balance, CDS and different tools and percentage swaps, they are 1.5 quadrillion dollars. So it can be destroyed in different ways. But when you have 3-5% growth of the rate, then the actives can be 3-5 times become cheaper. So this now it's imbalanced in because of the mechanisms. But our situation and the question about the energy transition, the assessment is that $100 trillion costs the world the energy transition up to the year 2050. For us, Andrei Belosov made 130 trillion rubles, but in fact, our energy balance is robust. Now, energy, this is the real weight of the economy in the world. Only 4 times less than United States, twice more than Germany. It's a huge one, and in fact, it's not needed in a green energy transition because gas is 55% already. It's clear that Germany and Europe, it's nothing. They have nothing to pay for our raw material. That's why they prefer not to pay 300 billions, or it's a little bit less of the central bank, 243 billion. But I think it's even more. This is that the half we gave to as a debt, and we have accumulated at euros and dollars in our banks and Western banks, foreign banks, where we had the permission and they have nothing to pay with. But I moved to the most interesting part. There are three options. The main two options, actually. The first one is alternative financing infrastructure. This is BRICS or Shanghai Organization. In BRICS, there is such option of compromise where we take the pool of mutual currency reserves of BRICS. 40% has China, 17 Russia and India, and Brazil, and South Africa is the rest. So the compromise is achieved. But if we take Eurasian Union can be somehow studied as a pilot project. But from the point of the volume of economy, we see that this is 3%. The roadmap is quite optimistic. It is not for 3-5 years, it's 10-15 years, because it's a very big and long story for the transition of any financial currencies. It has taken quite a lot of time. Nevertheless, 10 years ago in Astana there was a report where we have shown which can build the alternative scales to what is in SDR, and everything is connected to the existing role of the state in the world financial system and trade, and of course the territory, the population, the basic resources. As the basic resources are concerned, this is quite a clear picture that on treasuries accumulated we have two centers in the world, Europe and United States. Asia is chasing on the population, which is the most important in Asia and Africa are higher. In the resources we see that there is buffer, and we can count on that on the different positions we have the control tool. And further, there is an example of that not we have invented from the ground zero. It was all done to Adam Smith, and we suggest to come back not to Adam Smith but to Isaac Newton, who has changed all the coins in Great Britain, and together with the Bank of England. At the end of the 17th century, that was established the stable because of the robust and firm margin, and because of several mechanisms which were created by the financial infrastructure. It's clear that the trading corridors are like this, and this is clear that the sea trade, who controls it, controls and finances, but this is changing. It's clear that we have the stock exchange on the Eurasian space, but we need more other. We need a full financial infrastructure, audit, reinsurance, insurance, and clearing and calculation center, many other things. That's why it's quite a long way to go, but those who go, they would win. The another scenario is gold of cryptocurrency, but we see with cryptocurrency that the stock exchange had a problem. It was demolished in China. Indeed, it's prohibited to have the mining and trade of cryptocurrency. It won't be a basic gold, maybe. And if we look, that's almost 1,000 tons in a year. They move the last 25 years to India and China. If Europe doesn't want to pay with technologies, they can pay in cash with the gold if they need something. So in Russia, on this logic, we can prohibit, as in China, the export of the gold, and the central bank should purchase all the gold, but not to say that this is bring liquidity, because we see the numbers on the purchase of the gold of the central banks. The second or the third quarter result, 400 tons are bought. So this story and the final scenario, I'm going to finish on this. This is not the scenario, but this is somehow the condition of this success of the previous scenarios. They are in each other. It's more short term and more long term. This is alternative architecture. So we are seeing that our own resources on several positions, we need 2 times more than we can consume, and this is in the frames of our country. And to become the raw, to become the source of raw materials for China and Europe, that's not good. But those gold reserves, which we don't use to transform in strategic reserves, like China, and 3 million tons were purchased, and we are purchasing all the wheat for reserve, and 3-year consumption, 150 million tons they have in the reserve, and all other strategic resources is the same. For this, it should be needed the infrastructure and storage, and if we don't have the sales market, we need just to 57 trillion rubles buy to substitute this demand. Of course, it's not about everything, but nevertheless, this is possible to do. Of course, that's another model of economic policy. I would like to finish on this. Thank you very much for attention. Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, I would say that we in the Eurasian Union, we are working over the common space. This is the first step which in this direction is going. So the price making would be at our exchanges. Between the exchanges, there should be direct exchange. Shanghai Stock Exchange, Mumbai, and so on and so forth. Thank you very much. Thank you once again. And we continue, and I turn the floor to Sergey Kalinin, the managing director of electronic trade of Gazprom Bank. And I remind you kindly about the time frame. Thank you very much. I'll try to be brief. We not on the topic. We are not directly attached to the topic of report or the present session, but the name of representatives of business which are connected on the e-commerce. It's about what are the subjects which actually make the creation of the deals, such services. and this is about the short-term perspective and long-term perspective. I have my presentation. I would say a couple of words in the very beginning about what is the e-trade of Gazprom Bank. We at the market of e-commerce, we exist more than 10 years. We started as a facility as 223 federal law, and now we are representing all the tools for making the e-commerce purchase on territory of Russia. We have registered as a subject of the Russian Federation and the counteragents of our friendly countries. Mainly, we have activity from the side of countries of Eurasian zone. Recently, we met with the colleagues in Yerevan. We discussed the questions of trans-border calculations. And now, at the present moment, we are the company which, with our support, we have signed almost several trillion, 33 trillion rubles sum of money of the deals within our period of work on the market. Almost 10,000 customers make the electronic purchases at our facilities. We suggest to our customers more than 30 products of different products in order to make the digital transformation and somehow work and optimize the business process and to work in digital space. More than 750,000 suppliers are registered at our electronic trade platform, and every third purchase is done on our platform. Here we have a slide showing out of what the ecosystem consists. I won't enlist everything. I would like to pay your attention that we have the set of financial services and we help our customers to choose different bank warranties, credits, different tools, and at the same time we are not limited with the suggestion from our main shareholder Gazprom Bank. We have the set of, we can suggest actually the services of different organizations. Here we have the numbers, prerequisites of what was done by us in March. According to the task of the government, we will cooperate with Ministry of Trade for a long time, and we will launch the idea of the industry in Russia. This is the platform so that the local producers can apply about their products, somehow suggest to the market in more detailed way. And we have consulted the Ministry of Trade on how to make the catalog. In our developments on the catalogization and adjusted integration led us after what happened in the March of this year to launch the import substitution, which helps the market to find first of all, the alternative to the products and the producers who left the market of the Russian Federation, and generally find the alternatives out of those which are in the warehouses or the producers of Russia. Definitely the percentage which tells us that the import is very, very important. It means that we need to actively develop our production, and after we have shown our tools to representatives of the government, Minister of Trade, we had the choice on the marketplace portal. This is purchase for small and medium volume, and based on this platform, we launched the service of import substitution, which is a marketplace. The service helps to make the direct interaction between the customer and the supplier to find fast the suppliers of the analog in Russia and abroad, and to bring the limited products prohibited for export. The service works with all the juridical entities registered in Russia and abroad. We have actively registered almost 500 companies from Belarus, Kazakhstan. We studied statistics recently, the first place takes on the amount of the goods which were purchased at our stock exchange. And also on the amount of suppliers, the leaders are Belarus. Just a couple of words on the statistics, present statistics, our results, what we have achieved. More than 3,000 newly registered customers. In all these numbers, we have, we actually, since the March until the present moment, we control them more than 26,000 newly registered suppliers at our facility, more than 59,000 newly published at the price inquiries, new deals, 160,000, more than 160,000 new positions with the country of origin of the Russian Federation. So these are the goods which were done by our producers and purchased at our service, and the sum of the new deals is over 27 billion rubles. Then we enlist the benefits and how the service works. But I was asked to express my opinion on the transborder calculations. Like, I'm not the member of the Gazprom Bank, and as yesterday I was explained official statements from the Gazprom Bank, I have no opportunity to make it, but I can as to express my personal opinion as an expert on this topic. Based on the negotiations and the questions from the side of the market for our country agents who carry out the activity, and first of all, I would like to pay attention to what we used to talk about in the meeting in Yerevan with representatives of Eurasian zone and the members of IEC, and everyone agreed that the potential for the development is studied as the establishment of the new types of the digital payments, e-commerce platforms similar to MPS without the usage, which can work without the usage of the banking cards and the infrastructure. And this is a perspective story. Further, I wanted to many ask this question, and there are many competent opinions. The digital currency which can work without the usage of the banking cards, and we are also interested as a main alternative in order to make the transactions. Me personally, as IT specialist, I don't see this story without the establishment of the system of identification of physical and juridical entities, because in the frames of Eurasian space, because this would ease operations, all these operations. Definitely for this we need the infrastructure.
And we as a company recently have been paying attention very actively to the tools that allow to use the digital assets, and we also are very interested in smart contracts, so in the technologies that allow to do it all electronically also here. So that's all. Thank you, Sergey. Now I would like to give the floor to Ivan Saushkin. I don't think that the topic that you touched on goes out of the topics of sustainable development, but it allows to have a look at the problem from another angle. And our next speaker, Ivan, will help us to look at the problem from one more angle. So this is a company that makes the transport of friendly and unfriendly countries. We have just one speech, but we don't have much time. Maybe we'll delay 5 minutes.
Слышно? Отлично, хорошо. Прошу прощения, а куда нажимать? Не переключает.
So please, I would like to say a few words about the company. We are a Russian international transport logistic company. We have more than 170 people just in Russia, and we also have a lot of foreign subsidiaries in Asia, in Turkey, in the United States, in CIS, and we help our clients to solve logistic and trade solutions, to find trade solutions for them, for project transport, multimodal transport, e-commerce, and all transport solutions that are available at the market. So I would like to discuss the current situation that we have. So as the Minister of Transport, Vitaly Savelyev, said that the sanctions that we have against Russia, they broke all the logistic chains. So we lived before, and we have transport chains that went from Europe or from the United States of America, and we managed to deliver the goods. Everyone was used to some forecasted terms and solutions. We could plan for a year and even for 2 years. What do we have now? Now, since March, the biggest logistic, so sea lines, went away from the Russian market. They stopped to come to the Russian ports, and actually it led to the situation, to the panic reaction. People thought that there will be the deficit of equipment, of containers. Thanks God, the participants of the market managed to solve this task, and we didn't have a deficit, but mostly we had problems
С неготовностью логистической инфраструктуры как в России, так и в дружественных странах.
of the logistic infrastructure in Russia and also in our friendly countries, so who help us to bring the goods in this current situation. So, one moment.
Да.
So you can see it on the slide. So Turkey is now a kind of bottle entry for delivery of the goods and the ports of the Far East. So there we have very serious difficulties with processment of the goods that we have in the import and export. And now, objectively, the term is about 7-10 days, and the term of waiting can be up to 30 days. And then we have to take some decisions to react to the situation very urgently and to bring the goods from the port, to bring them to the stations. And I wanted to show you with my finger the map. So where the Caspian Sea is, when we have to bring the goods from India through Iran port, then to Russia, it also has a lot of problems because the ports of the Caspian Sea in Russia, like Makhachkala, this is the only one that works, and Iran port, they also have a lot of infrastructural restrictions. So terminal Salanka that is now in Russia, it is also for Caspian, and these are all, but these are river ports, and that's why we have problems with work with the goods and the goods that go through the Caspian region. So that's why we have to leave the goods in the ports that are the Caspian region for 30 days. This is the typical time of waiting to deliver the goods. It will take us 2 days to physically bring the goods from the port Nazalida to Astrakhan port. But then we have 30 days of waiting days just for your container to be put on the ship. So I would like also to say a few words about the trade relations that we have between participants for the logistic transport of the goods. So here on the screen you can see how we worked before. This is the direct scheme of cooperation. We have the buyer, we have the seller, and direct delivery. Now, what we have now. So now, with each deal, we have to use the proxy partner. In this case, it will be some country. So it will be a country that is in the friendly legislation, and they will help you to buy their goods and to pay for the freight. So here on the screen you can see, so as an example, you can see so you see that the documents that is necessary to be changed for transit operations to bring the goods. So for us and for our clients, we develop the matrix of decision making when we plan some deal. So we can give to us or to counter agents if you are ready or your supplier is ready to deliver the goods or to accept from you the payment. So it's necessary to analyze all these, and the actual implementation of the deal is similar to the quest. So you have to develop it for a long time and you have to implement it for a long time through third countries, and also the same with the money. It comes through 3-4 partners. So at the end, I would like just maybe to come a little bit closer to the topic of the conference regarding the mutual payments. So I would like to say that regarding the unfriendly countries, we stopped the financial relations with unfriendly countries. So the participants of the economic activity. We have also a lot of difficulties that we have when we have to pay the money. So if we pay in dollars or in euros, we have a lot of risks because the money will come to the correspondence accounts that are in unfriendly countries, and each payment can just stay or just do not reach the receiver. These are live cases that we have. Many our counter agents had their money blocked or sometimes just did not brought back. So as a result, I would like to say that in logistics, we don't have the tasks that we cannot solve. It's just that we have very limited resources and the time, and you can actually solve everything. But the situations that we have, I would like once again to go back to several slides back. So this is the slide number 10. So we know that the optimum delivery and the shortest distance is the direct delivery and direct distance from A to B. But now all manipulations with the goods or with the money that we have on the way, from buyer to seller, from supplier to the client. So then we have that the average increase of the financial chain starts from 5%. If we speak about logistics, then the costs for logistics will be already increased by 20% when we make the transfer through third countries. And if we discuss planes, then it will be by 2 times, so 200%, 300%, depending on how many countries you have to bring your good, to bring it to Russia or to bring it abroad. Thank you. Thank you. It was really very interesting and very useful. And so the final speech for today, I would like to give the floor to Irina Melnikova, to the head of the rating agency. So good afternoon. I think I have time just for 3 words. We are a credit agency. I would also like you to show my slides. I will show you 3 slides. I will have the information about 3 products that the rating agency, our rating agency, represent at the Russian market. So we are an agency that works at the Russian market. We have been working for 20 years. It's our anniversary this year. And we are representatives of the industry that was import replaced in 2015. The central bank accepted the law about the rating agencies, so we were working, but then there was the recall of credit ratings by the big three, and that's why there was a big question which rating agencies will evaluate the quality of the Russian companies that were under the sanctions. So the central bank, together with the government, worked and accepted the law 222. So the activity of rating agencies should be regulated. So we were one of the 4 rating agencies that were included in the register of rating agencies. And we give the ratings to banks, to financial companies, to leasing companies. If we go back to the topic of our agenda today, so we'll also work with sustainable development. And we started a few years ago together with the foundation of Wild Niche. And then 2022, we had a complex approach to this question. One of our key tasks is analysis and giving the USG ratings. So nowadays the company supports 4G rating, and in general, I will show to you our analytical study, and companies still want to have it, though the movement before, the movement of the integration of sustainable development agenda, were foreign investors, and then the demand for green tools were formed by foreign foundations, but still the agenda for our research and for our analysis, it's not small now. We have an experience of the verification of the green tool. We had a very interesting experience of issuing the green obligations, and we attracted the resources for the comparison of the first factory for the secondary processing of plastics. So according to the order of the government, these tools should be verified, and we are also the verificators of such tools that are included in the register of the International Economic Bank. And we did this verification of the tools. The verification is done annually, and we also evaluated for this verification the environmental effect. We had the confirmation not long time ago, and the terms were a little bit shifted. But in general, all the goals that the companies declared before the investors, that we have these projects, that this project has the money and the assent for the, for example, construction of the factory, it was all done. So we annually make the analysis of the ESG involvement of companies into sustainable development questions, and we published the list of the companies that shows how much they are involved, the companies are involved in ESG agenda. So we took the companies of the industrial sector Those who are on the list of the stock exchange and their stock exchange are quoted at the stock exchange market. So they were analyzed according to 3 indices, 3 factors, and we saw that the companies continue to pay attention to the agenda of sustainable development. Mostly they are big companies and they have quite a big stage of involvement. Until now, the strongest factor is the G factor. Just 5 minutes. These are already conclusions. Now the weakest factor is the E factor, but they still try to take a lot of efforts. I think that's all. Спасибо. So we managed to listen to all the speakers, and I'm sorry that I had to cut you a little bit. We'll have the possibility to send you the presentations. Some of these materials are really very interesting and it's necessary to study them. So to make a conclusion of our meeting, I would like to offer to you the following conclusion provisions. So we offer to consider the recommendations of the participants of the meeting of the Eurasian companies, BRICS and SCOs, how to improve the currency relations with friendly and unfriendly countries. So it's necessary to pay special attention for the countries of the Eurasian environment. And I think it will be supported by G20 as well. So next year, we are presidents of the Eurasian Commission. And we are also the president in G20. And I think that our work will be very helpful here. I also think that it's necessary to use the space of the Eurasian cooperation to organize the meetings of the interested participants and to develop some certain business projects and for their promotion, the promotion of the state and private partners at the trans-border basis. This is all, and I would like to say thank you to our co-moderator and to say thank you to everyone who helped us in the technical support. We have now a little bit of time for coffee break, and after it, we have the plenary session. Thank you.
Разумно задержали.